With us Ms. Prachi Bansal, who is a PhD scholar at the Center for Informal Sector and Legal Studies at Jawaharlal Nehru University. She is an alumna of Economics Department, Indraprastha College for Women. The topic of today's webinar is the impact of COVID-19 on the Indian economy. Ma'am, I would like to request you to kindly take over.
Hello everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
First of all, I want to extend thanks to the Alphabet Society, to my dear professors. I can see Ananta ma'am here, and to Principal Dr. Suraf, and Manvi Jain, who made all this possible with her efforts of coordinating and uh, getting us all together here. So, uh, so we have this chat option open, and I would really like to make it an interactive session here. So whatever your questions or your doubts, or you want to clarify something, I would like the students to be active on the chat option. Um, so the topic was the COVID-19 impacts on Indian economy, and I thought that I'll do the lecture in the following order. That first of all, I want to give you an overview of the impact on global economy, because we really have to understand India's position, vis-a-vis the global economy, and understand what are the major issues that the global economy is facing, and due to which there is some spillover effects that India has to deal with. And secondly, then go towards what are the various sectors in the Indian economy, like industry, agriculture, financial markets, trade and services, which are being impacted by this pandemic. Finally, I would like to then talk about the policy decisions that are being taken by India. So basically the fiscal and monetary policy decisions, but also other policy decisions that our authorities are taking in this view. And of course, each of the subtopic that I have listed is a very broad area, and each of them can be a seminar or webinar in itself. And so I can understand that if I don't get into, I may not be able to get into it completely, but I want to give sort of an overview of the situation. Yeah. So first, let me start with the global economy pandemic situation. Can you hear me? I heard a little bit of food. Are you guys able to hear me? Uh, so first, let me just start by giving you some facts about what is happening to the global economy. So if you're following the news, and there is also this thing that I would like to give out some resources to our students, and also I would want from my first year students that if I mistakenly use a term which you are not familiar with, then you please do let me know on the chat. Okay. So first, about some quick facts about the global economy situation. See, the analysis by the Department of Economic and Social Affairs, the UN department, is showing that the COVID-19 is disrupting the global supply chains and the international trade. World trade in both goods and services is already collapsing. The WTO expects the trade to fall anywhere between 13 and 2% over 2020. And even these projections are somewhat underestimates, because they implicitly rely on the fact that when the lockdown would open up, there would be a rapid containment of the virus, and the economy would fall back into its wheels again, which we all know is not going to happen soon enough. The IMF, the International Monetary Fund, also predicted that global output will fall by 3% in 2020, and as much as 4.5% in the per capita terms. And again, these are also very optimistic projections. Uh, Another major area, and since I am from the informal sector and labor studies, I have been keeping track of the situation of migrant workers, and we all have seen, I think, videos and news reports of what is happening to the migrant workers in India. But I would like to give you first a global snapshot of what is happening to the migrant workers globally, and then come to the Indian situation, which is, far more worse. So the ILO estimated in early April that more than 4 out of every 5 workers in the world would be facing the adverse impact of the pandemic. And most of them reside in the developing world. Women workers are more likely to be disproportionately adversely affected. They are more likely to lose jobs, experience major pay cuts, more likely to be rationed out of the labor market when jobs do become available, more likely to suffer during lockdowns because of enhanced possibilities of domestic abuse, and more likely to suffer from inadequate nutrition in the time of housing shortage. So eventually, what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to flag some issues. This is just not COVID impacts the Indian economy in terms of only output or in terms of only job employment losses, but there is a social dimension. And the social dimension, if we first talk about women, then of course women workers are the most worst affected by this COVID-19 outbreak. As it is already, our Indian data shows, the periodic labor force survey data, that the women workforce participation rates have fallen out drastically in the last 10 years. So, we are already, women workers are in a very, what should I say, fragile condition right now. And this COVID impact, and even if when we recover from it, they would be very hard hit. Let me now flag to the other issue, which is the migrants. And in the so let me just give you the global snapshot of it. So migrants play a substantial role in the agriculture food system. So, measures affecting the movement of people, both internationally and internally, and the resulting labor shortages will have an impact on the overall agriculture value chains. It would affect the food availability and the market prices globally. Okay, large shares of migrant work under informal or casual arrangements, which leave them unprotected, vulnerable to the exploitation, poverty, and food insecurity, and often without access to healthcare, social protection, and the measures being put in by the government. You see, there is a dramatic reduction in the remittances sent home as a result of the pandemic. Let me, for our first year students, just tell, I hope you are all familiar with the term remittances. Uh, so yes or no would be yes. So remittances basically are the okay, I got it. So uh, basically, when the workers go outside from different villages, they move to urban areas and they work in those areas. Their families who are sitting back in the village depend on the income of these working members, those who are migrating to other areas and working. So that income which they send to their families is basically the remittances. Okay, so livelihood of a lot of people, livelihood of the rural India, the elderly, the children who live in villages where their fathers or their mothers go to different villages to work or different towns to work. It really depends on those remittances, and there is a dramatic reduction in the remittances sent home because of this pandemic. And so there is a considerable impact on rural livelihoods, on the food and nutrition security in the areas which are hit by the pandemic. And this is, as I said, not just India. So let me just give you an example of European countries. So in European countries, the shortage of this migrant labor, have a wide can have a effect on a wide range of crops, especially the labor intensive crops. So tomatoes, cucumbers, peppers, strawberries, cherries, potatoes, asparagus, these kind of crops which are very labor intensive and contribute to your food security depend on the contribution of your migrant labor force. And overall, there may be an estimated shortfall about 1 million seasonal agriculture workers in Europe, who mainly come from Eastern Europe and Northern Africa. So these estimates that I'm giving you are being computed by the Food and Agriculture Organization. And I would also like to point out here to the students that we have a lot of media sources from which we are hearing different kinds of news, and sometimes we miss on the basic and the more important statistics. So I would like to really urge you all, since you are all active on social media, to follow these organizations on Twitter. So you must follow ILO, FAO, in Indian ministries. They bring out various policy briefs on, and they share it on their Twitter media. So it can be a very useful source for all the students to look at. Uh, Now, so this was about Europe. Farmer unions have also estimated a shortfall about 2 lakh seasonal workers in France, 3 lakh in Germany, 3 lakh 70,000 in Italy. Okay, so if you look at it, in America, we all know the situation is far worse. But if you look at it, the migrant workers are being hard hit, and it's sort of a vicious cycle. They are hit, and the food security depends on them. So the poor living in those areas are also hit. They cannot send remittances back their home. But okay, so what is it that is causing all these problems? It's a very pertinent question that is being uh, asked by many economists, that is it the virus, or is it the response that the countries have adopted to curb the spread of the virus that is creating a problem? So I would like to quote here in the words of Professor Jayati Ghosh, who has expressed this in the simplest language possible. Yes, Priyasha, I got your point. So Professor Ghosh has said, and I'll quote, that this very severe economic impact largely stems not from the pandemic itself, but measures that have been adopted across the world to contain it, which have ranged from relatively mild restrictions on mobility and public gatherings to complete lockdown and clampdowns that have brought to a halt most economic activity. This has meant a simultaneous attack on demand and supply. During lockdown, people, especially those without the formal work contracts, are deprived of incomes, and joblessness increases drastically, causing huge declines in consumption demand that will continue into the period after lockdown is lifted. At the same time, the production and distribution are halted for all but essential commodities and services, And even for these sectors, supply is badly affected because of implementation issues and inadequate attention to the large input-output linkages that enable production and distribution. Now, if I were to put it, various economists are saying that this is the worst ever crisis that has happened in the world history. So your 2008 financial crisis is is not was not even so half of it. The scale of this crisis is too big. So before we move on to the Indian economy and get into more details about that, I would just like to flag one simple statement which the World Health Organization and the International Monetary Fund have articulated. That they articulate that there is a they hold a joint position that the trade-off between saving lives and saving livelihoods is a false trade-off. And fighting the pandemic is necessary for creating conditions for the economy to rebound. So here, what is meant by this statement is that simply, in the Indian case, the number of deaths that are happening because of the pandemic are far less than the number of deaths happening because of a complete lockdown, because of people starving, or because people not being able to find work, or distress deaths. Okay. However, there would be there. Uh, let me just see here. Okay. Um, okay. Now, let me first come to what the it is. It is the need of the hour. It is the need of the hour. You cannot. I'm not denying that we should not have had a lockdown. We have to have a lockdown, and there is no denying that. But all many other countries have also had a lockdown, and many countries have bounced back of it. Many states have bounced back of it. In India, Kerala has bounced back of it. So there is a need to understand that you cannot. It's not just the lockdown, but it's also the other supplementary measures, and it's also the fact that we host 1.2 billion people in our country, and a large proportion of these workers are vulnerable. They work in the informal economy, and they are highly dependent on income transfers from the government now because there is no work. They are wage workers. They earn money and they spend money on a daily basis. Okay. So before we get into the impact of the COVID on various sectors of the economy, I would like to give briefly an outline of what are the various measures taken by the government to contain the pandemic. Okay, and here basically I am referring to the fiscal and monetary policy measures. This will rise to is higher than debts due to its inflation. Okay, let's just take the questions. Let's just take the questions a little while later. Is it okay? Okay. So, first of all, let me talk to you about the fiscal policy measures that the government has taken. So, we've announced a comprehensive economic package, which includes about 21.9 US billion dollars under the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana, and it targets about 800 million people who are affected by the lockdown. Okay, so it's a good policy measure, but we need to spend far more to be able to cater to all the people who are hit by this lockdown, to all the poor people who are hit by the lockdown. In terms of fiscal policy, I would also like to make a very crucial point here that what is the condition of what is the situation of India's fiscal budget right now? So, the special challenge to the government role is posed by the emergent fiscal situation. The slowdown of the Indian economy had already hit revenue collections of the central and state governments. And this is confirmed by the figures for the year 2019-2020, which are now almost completely available. The gross revenues from the central taxes for April to February period are lower than in the same period for the previous year. Okay. The economic impact of coronavirus emergency as well as the demand for relief measures from different sectors will only add to the problem of revenue. So one question, for example, that I would like the students of economics here to think is that while there is a global decline in the oil prices, why are the Indian oil prices not falling? Okay, so why are we not able to, benefit from the situation that the global oil prices have fallen? Why are we not able to give, slash our yes? So the problem is that the fiscal situation right now is such that if we want to adhere to fiscal prudence, and what is fiscal prudence? Uh, so let me just explain what fiscal prudence is. So, so if the government wants to fix up the a fixed percentage of GDP beyond which we don't want to take our fiscal deficit, okay, then basically we are having a measure of fiscal prudence here. To all my first year students, fiscal deficit is basically the shortfall, that the difference between the total expenditure by the government and the total revenue earned by the government. Okay. So the situation right now is such that we need to be able to do more about the increase more of fiscal spending. However, that is not happening. Now, let me then come to the next part of it, which is the monetary policy. So, what do people know? What is RBI doing about the monetary policy? Can I have some answers? Okay. I think nobody wishes to speak. Yes, yes, right. So, uh, right. So, this, right, they want to increase the liquidity, and these liquidity. And let me just let me just tell you briefly what measures they have taken. That lowered the reverse repo rate, and so lowering the reverse repo rate means that basically you are telling the banks, the commercial banks, that please don't give your money to RBI. Okay, don't put your money in RBI. Rather, you should lend it out to the investors. And this way, basically, you are encouraging, indeed telling the banks to push out more loans. Okay. Similarly, yes. So similarly, when you are saying that they announce that we will give they not only just slash the reverse repo rate, they also slash the repo rate. And the repo rate is the rate at which RBI lends to commercial banks. Yes, Neha, they have also reduced the CRR. So, doing all of this, basically what they are trying to say is that please give this money to the investors, loan this money out, right? Increase the liquidity. However, there is one major problem is that there is no taker of their money. No industrialist would want to think of expanding the business or invest in plant and machinery or hire new workers or open new branches or diversify in any other standard ways using the money in the good old fashioned manner because of these times. It's a lockdown. Who would buy their products? So there is a demand crunch and there is a supply crunch. So, the monetary policy, even though it is the correct monetary policy, it is the correct thing to do. The the monetary policy it's not working anymore. Okay. So as it is, the economy was in a tailspin from before. Bank credit had been declining for several quarters before the COVID-19 pandemic emerged. Right. Now, let me move after having given a basic idea of what is the situation. Uh, After having given what the basic idea of what are the fiscal policy and monetary policy measures that are being taken by the government, let me go towards the major sectors which are impacted. Okay, so first and foremost, let's talk about the industrial sector. And since I have already spoken about the migrant workers, the problems that I guess all of you may have been, tracking the news and seeing that the migrant workers are not able to work and they are thrown out of the state by the state governments. So what happens to the micro, small, and medium enterprises, the MSMEs? Okay. So the MSMEs are the hardest hit due to the COVID-19 lockdown. At present, the sector provides employment to about 114 million people and contributes 30% of India's GDP. Not to mention that close to half of the country's exports come from products and services within this sector, from within the MSMEs. So, these are most hit, and right now, recently a survey was undertaken of 5,000 MSMEs by the All India Manufacturers Organization, and they found that 70%, 71% of these MSMEs could not pay their workers' salaries in the month of March. So you see, we are not just talking about, and MSMEs is not a small portion. MSMEs are a big portion of the, and a real challenge is actually in identifying these MSMEs. There are about 63.4 million unincorporated MSMEs, out of which 99% are micro enterprises that remain largely informal. So, we have NSS data, the National Statistical Organization data, which gives you figures on what percent of your manufacturing sector is unorganized, of your services sector is unorganized, okay, of your trading is unorganized, and that is a huge number. So these people are basically workers in informal economy. They are, somebody like a street vendor opening a small shop, a small repair shops, or small hotel, dhaba workers, small dhabas. They are all badly hit because of the pandemic. Now, what has happened to agriculture? First, why do we even have to talk about agriculture? First is that from the point of view of food, the agriculture sector is critically important. And secondly, though the share of GDP from agriculture is low, it is still the largest employer. No, it is affected. Charu, okay. Okay. So let me get back to agriculture and let's take the questions after say 10 minutes. Okay. So agriculture is, as I said, it has the largest number of people who depend on it for its livelihood, about 45% of India's population. And also, it is a sector which produces a large quantum of perishables, vegetables, fruits, milk, poultry, meat products, fish, which cannot be whole. Uh, okay, okay, Besaki ma'am, sure. Uh, mm, Also, processing of food. Sorry, I was saying that agriculture is a sector which has a large amount of perishables, and these cannot be held in stock for a long period of time. Cold storage capacity in India is at 40 million tons. 40 million tons. These captions are not correctly putting out the numbers. So it is extremely scarce. Also, the processing of food, which would lengthen the lives of these products, happens only at a limited scale in India. So there are several agricultural products like food grains that also have a semi-perishable character in the sense that they need to have some kind of processing. And these facilities are not necessarily available with the producers at the time of production, but also further down the supply chain. Okay. Next thing is that, so we have a directive from the government that agriculture is exempted from the lockdown, right? I hope some of you may have heard of it, that they have exempted, uh, okay, there is some presentation happening, right? Yeah, that agriculture is exempted from the lockdown. But what is happening is that though they have allowed people to go and harvest their grain, the problem is the input markets. The input markets are not functioning very well. So they have allowed the input markets, or what is known as mandi, to be open for some 2 to 3 hours in a particular day, but people are not able to come to the mandi because there is no transport. So you see, there are these logistical issues. You can say that agriculture is exempted, but how would people harvest? There is no migrant labor. All harvesting in Haryana and Punjab that happens now. So the wheat harvesting is going to happen now. Madhya Pradesh, the wheat harvesting is going to happen. The harvesting happens in two ways. Either you use a combine harvester, that is a machine, or you hire laborers. Also, the combine harvester would not drive itself. You would have to have people to drive it. So, so the problem is that the labor is not available. Combine harvesters are stuck in different places. They are not able to come to Punjab or Haryana to do the harvesting. And though, even if the people are able to harvest, say using their family labor, okay, and yes, exactly, Vaishakhi ma'am, the jute bags are not available. So the input market. So I have written a paper recently on what has been the impact on the Indian mandis, and I would provide the link to the same. But if what I'm telling you is that suppose a farmer wants to buy fertilizer, okay, you need fertilizer to increase the yield of the land. What do you mean by yield? That per acre, how much of output you can get. So if you want to increase that, you want to put in some fertilizer. I'm talking in very layman terms so that I can reach out to the students. Now, fertilizers are available in bags of 50 kgs. Okay. So if a farmer somehow manages to reach the mandi to buy the fertilizer, how is he going to lift it? There is no labor. How are you going to lift the bags of fertilizers and get it? Secondly, there is no supply coming from the pesticide companies, from the fertilizer companies to these shops. So there is that issue also. So the input market is totally drained. Second, and something which I guess many of you would have seen in various media networks, is people throwing off their vegetables. They are not able to sell their vegetables. Now, a very important question that I would like to ask here is that you or I or your parents, whoever is going to buy the vegetable right now in the market, are saying that the prices are high, right? We are saying that there's a shortfall, the prices are high. But in the media, you get reports of people showing that vegetables are, they're rotting. So what is this mismatch? Why is there a mismatch? I spoke to people in the village and I asked them, they are vegetable farmers. They grew cauliflower. It used to fetch them rupees 15 per kg. But they had to throw it because not even for 2 rupees they are able to sell it. The problem is that only, the yes, first of all, lack of transportation. You cannot reach the transport. And plus the commission agents, or if you know, the word is arthi, commission agents, those who facilitate the sale of products from the mandi to your final, to your doorstep. They are operating only within their own networks, favoring the whole supply chain is broken. So, these are major issues, and there is a lot of rural distress. let's talk about other than crop production, come to livestock. Okay. So livestock again, the problem is that people are not able to sow jowar or bajra or your barsim. So what are these crops? These crops are basically feed crops. These are green fodder that is given to the animals. Since they are not able to sow the green fodder, the problem is that they are experiencing decrease in milk yields. They are not able to sell enough milk. Now, obviously, agriculture is very hard hit. What about food security? So let me again quote David Beasley. The Because the fodder seeds are not available, Priyasha. The input markets are not opening. So David Beasley, the executive director of World Food Program, said that this is truly more than just a pandemic. It is creating a hunger pandemic. This is a humanitarian and food catastrophe. Now, the central government on March 26 announced that the government will give 5 kg wheat or rice and 1 kg of preferred pulses free of cost to 80 crore people under NFSA. NFSA is your National Food Security Act. Okay, so besides the beneficiaries, they will get their additional 2 kg of grains for the next 3 months at subsidized rates, so that people do not suffer from the lockdown imposed due to COVID-19. Okay, but there is also a problem in this. The problem is that the beneficiaries under NFSA, which was implemented in 2013, are based on the census of 2011. Okay, so there was a count of people that happened in the census of 2011, and based on that, you saw who were the poor people, who are the beneficiaries, and you start distributing grains to them if they have the ration card. Now, the problem is that population has increased multifold in the last 10 years, and the number of eligible people under NFSA has increased. So, though many people have applied for the grains, they are not able to get it. And I would like you all to go through this article written by Jean Blaise and Ritika Khera, who have mentioned that this is a very basic problem. You know, the you are not getting the grains that are required. So even the NFSA is not reaching everyone. There are a lot of people who are not registered. A lot of them who do not have ration cards. Now, okay, so this was basically about industry, the India's fiscal condition, the stock market. I would not get very deep into it because there are various indexes that you can use to track it. But first is how the food demand decreased even if we are taking it during lockdown. Because see, the middle class can afford to take food during lockdown. The people who are in the people who are in distress in rural India are also in a condition where they are, going to a situation where they have to skip meals. So the starvation problem is a big problem, which has to be dealt with. Otherwise, you are leading towards a famine. Now, okay, so I would just like to ask Manvi or whoever is available here that would this be sufficient? Should I go on, or do you want to get into question answers, or is there some particular issue that the students would like to discuss? Also, just before you answer me, I would like to mention that there is a site. Let me just write it out. Okay, I have just sent a link to a site, coronapolicyimpact.org, where a bunch of us students and professors like along are making a repository of different types of news on how COVID-19 impacts the Indian economy. Okay, so we have its impact on agriculture, food security, industry, fourth estate, and so on and so forth from different print medias and video sources and all. And there are some so yes, how the private employees are affected due to COVID. So let me just get back to your question and finish what I was saying, that uh, that there is a, so in this website you will find two kinds of things which are important for uh, for all of you. One is that there is a uh, from different sources of media, a repository of articles on what are the various problems faced in various industries, agriculture, and different sectors of the economy. The other is that we have a series of reports by different scholars who are talking to people in different villages and saying that, asking that what is the impact in their village. So, for example, I've asked to farmers in Haryana that how has the COVID-19 impacted them. I spoke to some people in the mandis. There are reports from all over India. Okay, so it's a good way to see what in reality the what are the various problems that people are facing. So this is a good site for you. Another thing that I suggested in the very beginning of the lecture was that you all should follow the WHO, IMF, ILO, FAO, because they from time to time are bringing out various policy measures. And in fact, ILO has a very good compendium of different policy measures, both fiscal and monetary, taken by different countries. So let me also share the link to that um, with all of you. Um, Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear.
Hello. Sorry, I have some network connectivity issue. Okay, yeah. Let me just put it on chat. I guess I'll just send you the link. I'll just send you the link when I get to it. I okay. Here it is. Okay. So yes, can you see the link that I've just sent? This is ILO's link to what are the various countries' responses towards this pandemic, and it gives you what are the fiscal measures taken by the countries, what are the monetary measures taken by the countries, and what are the other measures. So, for example, in our case, other measure would be a lockdown. Okay, so there are different kind of other measures also listed here, and it's a very good exercise to carry out what different countries are doing. What is the quantum of their fiscal packages? What is the quantum of their monetary policy measures? Okay, what other things that they're doing to keep their economies from collapsing? So can we end it here and we move to questions, or do you want me to go further? What is the
Hi, ma'am. Yes, if it's okay with you,
yes.
we can start with the questions.
So should I go through the chat?
Yes, ma'am. I request everyone to post their questions in the chat box.
Okay, let's cover all the sectors. So I think today we can restrict our attention to the agriculture sector, considering booms and crashes. Trends to have be observed. How long would you say that the economy will take? Okay, on this question of Priyasha, that on how long the economies will take to bounce back from the crash, I would like to say that different economies are at very different situations. So China has already managed to revive its economy despite being the source, despite being the origin of the virus. US is in a situation where they already, have a an edge over other countries in the sense that they are the holders of the main reserve. So they hold the US dollar, which is the most precious reserve right now, and we are experiencing a very bad currency depreciation. So, the Indian economy is in particular a situation where it is that not only you are going to pay for the result of the pandemic, but you are also going to pay for the fact that your policies uh, in the past 20-25 years have been such that you have not really you have created a divergence within the sector, that there is an unorganized sector which has become the largest employer, and now that unorganized sector is on the verge of collapse. So the path of different economies recovering from the crash would be different for different economies. It is not something that can be predicted. You cannot just say that there is no fresh case of corona, so the economies have revived. That is not going to happen. On Dolly's question, how financial markets are affected due to COVID, I would like to say that, see, the major financial market thing that has happened recently because of the COVID pandemic is that foreign portfolio investors have net withdrawn a record of rupees 1.1 lakh crore from the Indian markets in March. And so coronavirus has, really dented the investor sentiment worldwide. So that is a problem. But also we know that financial markets are not markets where which are very tangible, or which are so they'll come back again when they'll see the scope for money. So there is that thing with financial markets that can happen. But as of now, the FPIs have really withdrawn themselves, and they've done it fast. Okay. Next is how the private employees are affected due to COVID. Now, since you just inaugurated the journal, and I saw some of the papers that were presented in that competition are in that journal, and there was one paper on the food, Zomato, Swiggy thing, as far as I remember. So, these people, the private employees, the gig economy employees, the employees who work for these delivery channels, are also worst affected, because they don't have a full-time contract. They are not or they are not employed by the government in the sense that they would be getting permanent salaries. So the private employees in that sense are very badly affected. Also, if you will talk about self-employed people, unless you are actually manufacturing sanitizers, self-employed people are also very badly hit. There is a demand crunch. So even if you are making things, you are able to operate. So you are able to open your shops. People are not coming to buy stuff from you. Okay. Is there? Okay, there are many other questions. Okay, let me just take them. Uh, Yes, the depreciation can work in favor of us by making our export cheaper, but that is only if we are able to export. And currently, the situation is such that you are not able to manufacture. Since manufacturing is not happening, the exports are really going to, they'll take a lot of time to pick up. Okay, the on the impact of higher education. Given the problems it was already facing before the COVID-19 spread, Sambhavi, I would like to first say is that, a big congratulations to all of you to be able to pull this off on internet where, I am not dropping my connection and you guys are here because for a lot of us, it's very difficult to do any kind of online teaching or online learning because, this is not an easy thing to do. Uh, Many people come from rural areas and even people from Kashmir who do not have more than 2G networks. They are not able to go into any kind of online learning. So higher education is definitely impacted. There would be we hope that there will be some extension of semesters or something that can make this possible. Of course, webinars and being able to read and write during this time is a big support that that we have to maintain. Okay, on how will the inflation rate and unemployment rate be affected? Okay, so as you see, the unemployment rate has increased massively, and let me just give you numbers that. Mahesh Vyas on the situation of so I'm talking about Mahesh Vyas from CMIE, the Center for Monitoring Indian Economy, showed that the unemployment rate was already 8.7% in March, and in the last week of March, when the lockdown was imposed, the unemployment rate was 23.8%. So you can well understand that the unemployment is going to be on a huge rise, and if people are not given any kind of employment benefits, if NREGA, PDS are not strengthened, millions of workers are vulnerable to income loss and layoffs. The impact on income generating activities is especially harsh for unprotected workers and the most vulnerable groups in the informal economy. Yes, it will definitely be some kind of a stagflation situation, ma'am. Is there any other question? Okay, yes. There's one more. That do you think a financial emergency should be declared? Well, it is a financial emergency. It's an hunger emergency. It's an emergency. There is no doubt about it. And people and various economists have, said that they want to give RBI the option that they should print more money. They should be able to reach rural people. That's just not money that would solve the problem here. People need food. You have to be able to reach people and, allow them to buy food at subsidized rates, to give them work, to give them wages. If they were registered under Narega, they should be getting wages even if there is no work. Right? So I think all of these subsectors and all of these topics are such that you can have a seminar on each of them, because it's a very wide topic that we have with us today. So
I think that was all for the questions.
thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It was indeed a very informative session. And thank you for taking out time for us. We are very grateful. Thank you so much.